Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. You know, it's not ironic at all that the same political punk who screams that everyone from teachers to Mickey Mouse is a pedophile and has a secret, creepy obsession with children is himself demanding that underage girls give reports on their menstrual cycles. Now, the talking point that's getting kicked around is that this was an athletic association that's doing this, and they're not under DeSantis' office, so he can't be held accountable for any of that. Which, of course, to my thinking is right up there with, I was just following orders. First of all, DeSantis' own education commissioner is a member of this athletic association, and he appoints at least 3 of the members. Now keep in mind, when a state's attorney down there said that he would not enforce DeSantis' abortion ban or sex changes for minors, DeSantis had him suspended. Florida is pretty much the only state where the legislature decided to make it where every elected official is basically an employee of the governor, and that the governor can remove any elected office holder that he wants at any time for any reason or for no reason whatsoever. By the way, that state's attorney went to federal court to sue DeSantis over this. The federal judge said that he didn't have jurisdiction since these were state laws that DeSantis was using, but the federal judge did say that the state's attorney's First Amendment rights had been violated and that DeSantis' claims that the man was incompetent or that he had otherwise broached his duty was incorrect. But of course, DeSantis immediately turned around after this ruling and said the judge agreed that this guy was incompetent and that we had every right to get rid of him. My point being that when DeSantis' own education commissioner is on this athletic board, that's DeSantis' man on the scene. And if this education commissioner is not objecting to what's going on with that athletic board, that's because DeSantis doesn't object to it either. The inbreds in Florida who signed away their ability to have a democracy did it because they figured that legislating a Republican to be in office forever would basically mean they could escape the very ballot box which they feared. The genetic recessive, mentally deficient hayseeds who think that DeSantis' behavior is cute are desperate for anything that they can point to and feel like it's a win, even if it's not. A number of the Republicans have been watching helplessly as they see that they're losing more and more of the critical mass of support that they need to hold on to legislatures and be able to write the laws. And they saw that this process had begun a long time ago, so now it's all about trying to extend their rule as long as possible before the inevitable collapse. One of the principal means that they've been using is supersonic gerrymandering and making it where the one office that they think they can get, at least at a statewide level through a preponderance of votes, they give that all the power in the state, basically turning the governorship into a super branch of the state's government, because that's pretty much all they got. Think of it as the electoral equivalent of what the white right think tanks have been advocating regarding federal judgeships. They know that the perpetually angry white right majority of votes that they've been relying on is dwindling and declining, so their ability to elect enough right-wing nuts to write the laws is in decline. They need a way to be able to do an end run around the legislatures that they're losing their grip on. That's where the courts come in. This is the reason that Mitch McConnell has been so uber-obsessed with getting as many right-wing operatives appointed to the federal bench and making sure that they are as young as possible. Because federal judgeships are lifetime appointments, and by putting Federalist Society flunkies on the bench, the white right will be able to interfere with, if not stop fully constitutional laws that they don't like. So this is their means of trying to make sure that they at least remain in a position to influence policy for at least another 1, perhaps even 2 generations. This puts the lie to the idea that the Republicans think people actually favor their policies. If they truly believed that, they wouldn't need to engineer kangaroo courts at the federal level, and they wouldn't need to violate the allegedly sacrosanct idea of local control and basic democracy by giving the governor of a state the ability to remove any elected official that he doesn't approve of. And while it's true that all of DeSantis' asinine antics are in fact performative extremism, it's also true that he's desperately hoping that some of them might actually prove successful. Well, what happens whenever an electorate are stupid enough to allow someone to have political power without fear of ever losing it? It's not long before they begin abusing the very morons who gave them that perpetual power in the first place. Right now, DeSantis is trying to write the state curriculum for all of the universities and colleges in the state of Florida. So when it comes time to talk about an athletic commission, you think that DeSantis isn't actually watching this one? Don't dream. These white supremacists down in Florida will never admit that they were wrong. They're now claiming that it's okay for their underage daughters to have to give Governor Panty Sniffer reports on their menstrual cycles. It's like I've always told you, white supremacy only values its power. It matters to them more than anything, including the lives of their own children. These are people who won't do anything to stop school shootings, which are being committed by suburban and rural youth, shall we say. Definitely not being done by inner city youth. That's just a fact. Deal with it. So, of course, you can't possibly expect a gang of reprobates to protect the dignity and privacy of their own children when they refuse to do anything to protect those children's lives. You know, I get a chuckle out of the right wingnuts fleeing to the state of Florida. It means that they're in retreat from other places in the country. They've thrown in the towel in these other states. The pathetic game of phony racial hysteria that the Manhattan Institute hired Chris Rufo to push only works in a handful of blood-red clavern states. But it's not a national strategy. DeSantis' entire political strategy is do some outrageous thing, go on Fox News and guffaw that they're owning the libs, repeat. He's entirely desperate to get attention. He thinks that if he can get people to know who he is, then that means he'll get the nomination, and in his imagination that makes him a shoo-in to be president. As DeSantis sees it, his entire problem happens to be one of name recognition, and as far as he's concerned, the only bad publicity is none at all. He thinks that it's much better that he be hated as opposed to people not even knowing who he is. I already explained in a prior video why it don't work that way. Elections, especially presidential elections, don't work like that. In his utter desperation, DeSantis is breaking the first rule of successful elections. Don't just do something smart. Now, part of DeSantis' myriad of delusions comes from the fact that 2016 was a very, very rare event that a lot of Republicans are trying to tell themselves was somehow the norm when it wasn't. Yes, it was an upset for the ages when Donald Trump won the presidency, but the truth of the matter is, if anyone else had been on the ballot other than Hillary Clinton, he would not have won. It wasn't so much that Donald Trump won the election as much as the Democrats ran the worst possible person that they could. Hillary Clinton had plenty of stroke inside the Democratic establishment and with the white media, but she dang sure didn't make the political base of the Democrat Party's hearts go pitter-pat. And that was what sealed her fate. You had a weakened Democratic contender, Hillary Clinton, and she was weakened because Obama had soured the Democrats' voter base, that is, black voters. Hillary Clinton's nomination was like a slap in the face. She refused to answer for or even acknowledge the decades of anti-black policies her husband set in motion and that she did nothing about when she was in the Senate. And she doubled down on this by refusing to go to campaign in places like Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia, because she figured that black voters had no choice but to vote for her because Trump is too dangerous. At least that was her assumption. Her goal wasn't to gain black support, it was to avoid black scrutiny and evade black demands. She did that, at least on the campaign trail, and she lost the election as a result. But for Republicans, they took the wrong lesson away from the 2016 election. First of all, they were terrified following the 2012 re-election of Obama. You should go back sometime and watch the video of Bill O'Reilly's reaction when Obama was re-elected. The conservatives had spent the first 4 years of Obama's administration repeating the pathetic mantra, voters only voted for Obama to prove that they weren't racist, but now they're going to vote against him to prove they're not stupid. This is what happens when you take refuge inside a bubble, and the only company you have inside the bubble are other frightened, ignorant, like-minded bigots. And all of you sit around huffing each other's farts, repeating the same lies over and over to one another. It's a form of self-brainwashing. Well, reality always has a way of spoiling that little game. So when Obama was re-elected in 2012, the white right simply couldn't believe it. That's why O'Reilly said that Obama's re-election meant that the America they had all known was no more. Forget the fact that the America that the white right are so nostalgic for largely never existed in the first place. White supremacy is weak. It's the position taken by the dumbest, most feeble, most helpless and worthless in the society. White supremacy is terrified of its own shadow. It's a lie. And since it's a lie, the white supremacists become ultra-hypersensitive to anything that even remotely seems like it might one day be a threat to them or merely even a challenge. A large part of their power is pushing the idea that only white people in general and white men in specific can and should lead. If people are made to see an example that refutes that lie, then they'll lose their minds because they know that their position is totally artificial. As Lincoln said, I would see the superior position assigned to the white man. He didn't say the white man would earn the superior position. He did not say that it was the white man's natural result of his own hard work dent in industry. Lincoln said he wanted it to be assigned to the white man. That means handed to him. And from the Homestead Act to the programs for GIs coming back from both of the world wars, all the way up to the PPP loans, this government has handed things to white society every day. So what happens when they see something like Obama come along? They see the threat of a meritocracy, the very thing the white supremacy promised that it would prevent from ever happening. White supremacy is a dirty deal, a bargain made between the white elite and those rank and file who are classified as white. And the glue that holds it together is a system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees assigned to those who the system has classified as white and denied to those classified as black. After Obama won re-election, they were terrified that there would never be another white president, at least never from the Republican Party. So when Trump won, they felt like they had one last chance to try to freeze the system in place. This is what's happened in Mississippi and Florida and other places. These white supremacists only say that what they ought to do is Some of these white supremacists have been bold enough to openly say that what they ought to do is to try to seize political power one last time by hook or by crook, and then as soon as they get the office, just declare that all future elections are canceled and that they are in charge forever. Look, I know there's a variety of people who come here, and when it comes to political policy, the opinions I see run the gamut. And I am the last one to say that the Walt Disney Corporation is our friend. But let's put aside whatever political views we may have about that rat's nest that Mickey Mouse came out of, and understand that whatever your opposition to the propaganda coming out of the Disney Corporation, Ron DeSantis doesn't care about that, and he doesn't care about you. Nothing he's doing is going to help black people. Neither Disney nor DeSantis is on our side. When the Florida GOP talks about Disney wanting to groom children, that's not disgust you sense from them, it's envy. When you hear these Florida GOP creeps talking about protecting children, that doesn't mean black children. All the laws they've been talking about have been geared toward white children. So when it comes to us, understand that fact. Disney and DeSantis are not our friends. One of them wants to spread confusion about identity, the other one wants to erase our identity. That's a distinction without a difference, and if you're one of these flat earthers who actually thinks that DeSantis' political grandstanding against Disney somehow has some good in it for us, let me ask you this. When has Ron DeSantis ever stood with black people on anything? Anything at all? When he claims that AP Black Studies course that he blocked had gender identity material in it, that's sprinkling sugar on crap. Critical race theory has absolutely nothing to do with gender anything. Same with the 1619 Project. Do you see DeSantis embracing either one of those, or has he made attacking critical race theory the cornerstone of his asinine would-be presidential campaign? Under white supremacy, the enemy of your enemy isn't necessarily your friend. When you're surrounded by this many bad guys, as often as not, the enemy of your enemy is your enemy too. We have no friends. Tattoo it on the underside of your eyelids if you have to. What DeSantis and trash like Rufo are doing is psychological masturbation. They're beating a drum that no one is listening to. The whole white right wet dream of outlawing anything that so much as offends them, which is everything, has largely been a failure, even in their own state. The problem, though, is that the Democrats are not reciprocating with retaliatory legislation, and they're not fighting DeSantis over any of his own maneuvers either. Black people have pushed policies that threaten the very white power that Democrats were supposed to be pacifying us into not challenging. They see certain advantages in allowing Ron DeSantis to run amok and, they hope, be able to push the envelope on certain things. Remember, white supremacy believes in taking both sides of the conversation. Thank you very much, Neely Fuller. We can't afford to let ourselves go getting confused about who the enemies, plural, are here. And what we also can't afford to do is to let trash like Ron DeSantis have the last word. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Hildman Gallo, Eric Bailey, Michael Rubin, LaFleur Ivy, and Mary Bass. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.